Oh hey, how's it going? You join me once again for another Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each and every Tuesday we bring you a brand new fresh photography tutorial. This week it's a little bit more of a relaxed Tutorial Tuesday this week. There's a lot going on, so we're gonna edit some photos together. We're gonna dive into Lightroom Classic. We're gonna edit some wildlife photos. Now, these were photos taken recently on the Sigma 500mm f5.6. Lovely lens, really small, really lightweight. And I got loads and loads of shots. In between all this rain, I had a day where it was actually sunny. And I went out and I actually managed to find loads of little birds, squirrels, herons, jaybirds, all kinds of stuff. We're gonna dive in. We're going to edit them. There's no specific theme to what we're doing in Lightroom, like one specific trick that's going to change all of your editing forever. It's more of a kind of, I guess, how I edit these photos, how my workflow goes. Let's dive in. Let's start with this photo here. So this is obviously a photo of our little friend here, little blue tit. Is that right? Is that right? I'm no ornithologist, that's for sure. So if that's not a blue tit, let me know in the comments. Maybe if it is, let me know, because I've always assumed it's a blue tit. I won't lie to you. There's a lot of yellow going on there. I don't know if I fully understand why it's called a blue tit. Maybe you could let me know. If you know those things, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, let's go ahead and edit the photo of our little friend here. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is actually crop in a little bit. Obviously, I was using a 500mm prime lens. That means there's no capability of zooming, which is completely fine, completely understandable, because we can just crop in a little bit. I was using the A7 III, so I've got a little bit of room to play around there. The next thing I'm going to do is actually just bump up the overall exposure. I don't want to go too crazy because the background is surprisingly light. I'm going to bring those highlights down a little bit. I think that there must have been sun directly on some leaves behind, but we've got some nice sort of bokeh to play around with. The twigs, the sticks coming out of these branches nicely kind of frame our subject here. So I think it's all going to work pretty well. I'm going to leave the shadows as they are. I'm going to warm up the overall photo though. I'm going to add some warm tones in there, not too much. I like the way this looks so far. I'm also going to bring the blacks down just a touch. Again, not too much, and bring that clarity up. A little bit of vibrance maybe, just to sort of really pull those colors out a little bit more. Maybe even just a touch of saturation, not too much, but we're dealing with a raw photo. So we're going to go, we're going to go for a little bit here. Let's come down to the HSL sliders here. We're going to just bring the orange down to more of a burnt kind of rich orange. The yellow's down a little bit as well towards the orange, just to warm everything up there. Greens, I'm actually gonna bring that towards the yellows as well. I really want to pull this into that kind of color palette. So we've got a lot of yellows here. I'm gonna bring the blues just over towards the sort of teal side of things, but not too crazy. If we were to turn off the HSL now and then turn it back on, it's a very subtle difference. So I think we're doing okay. I think we're doing all right. We might even want to go into luminance and just maybe bring those yellows down just a touch. Maybe the greens down just a touch, just to reduce how aggressive the background light is. Okay, we're going to come all the way down now. We're going to hit, I don't think we need to touch any of this stuff actually. Do you know what? I might bump a little bit of a vignette on there just to really focus in on our subject here. And the red primary maybe over to the orange, the blue primary maybe over to the teal. I think I like the look of that. Let's turn that off and back on. I think that's looking pretty good. The main thing we need to do now is really deal with the light and probably a bit of masking. So let's come up here to the top right, where we're going to go ahead and click the masking panel. I'm going to click subject. Let's see how Lightroom deals with this. It's done pretty well actually. So it has definitely masked out our little friend here. It's got a bit of the branch that he's sitting on, which we don't necessarily want. But you know what? For now, I'm actually going to leave it. I'm going to bump the exposure up. I'm going to bump the shadows up just a little bit as well. I think that's, do you know what? I think that's actually looking pretty good. Maybe the clarity just a touch. Let's look at before and after. So this was how it was when we started editing. This is where we've got to. So I like what we've done with the colors. If I'm honest, I like how we've warmed it up. I like how we've got this sort of golden feel to it. And we've definitely brightened up our subject here. We could even go ahead, just use a brush. I'm going to pop that just over his eye and sort of on his face there. Just brighten that a little bit more as well. Let's even maybe go for a radial gradient, something like this. Let's right click, intersect mask with select background. Now that's going to make that radial gradient only apply behind our friend here. What happens if I bring that exposure down? Does it start to look a bit weird? Does that start to look a bit not real? Maybe. Okay, we'll just bring it down just a touch. Just enough. But do you know what? I'm pretty happy with that. Let's look one more time, the before and after. This was before we started. This is where we've taken it to. And I think that's more than enough, to be honest with you. I might even crop in just a little bit more. I don't know that we need all the space around him. I'm going to center him up. There we go. I think that's really nice. Before, after. I'm really happy with that photo. Let's move on to another one. Right, okay, we've got this photo here of a little bit of a larger squirrel, should we say. I think it's probably not his first time coming near humans. He knows he's looking cute. He knows how to get the food. Fair enough. He's come up pretty close, probably really about as close as I could have been to him before. I'm not going to be able to focus. So we've almost got more of a portrait feel to this photo. There are just a couple of things I want to do to this. There's not loads of editing we need to do to this photo. Not every photo needs loads of editing done to it. And actually, even though I love editing photos, sometimes you've got to pull back. Sometimes you've got to say, do you know what? The photo doesn't need too much done to it. I am going to crop in. I think it works better if he's a little bit more centered up. I think we can go something like this. I think it's fine to lose a little bit of the tail there, a little bit of his body. I think that's okay. I think that's probably a more powerful end result. And for this one, I think I'd probably want to go either keep it pretty minimalist and that's actually fine. I could definitely do some dodging and burning. But you know what? I think for this photo, I want to use one of the Lightroom presets. So I'm actually going to come over here. One of my favorites is something like this one here. So in the cinematic kind of folder here, CN03, right? It's pretty strong in how it stylizes the photo. But we can come up here and just reduce the amount this preset is being applied. But I really like the look of this. What I'm going to do then is just go for one mask kind of across his face here and just bump the exposure up just a touch. And then maybe, do you know what? I said one mask. Let's do two masks. Let's do one more like this. Let's invert it and let's darken it a little bit. So we've got kind of a bit of a vignette, but quite a strong vignette around him. Let's look at the before and after. So this was before, obviously it doesn't include the crop, but this was where we started after cropping. And this is where we got to. I think that focuses in on our squirrel friend here. I think it gives a nice style to the photo. I'm really happy with it. Not loads of editing that we had to do, but you know what? Super handy. I love using Lightroom presets. I think they're a really good point to go to if you don't necessarily know exactly what you want to do with the photo. Maybe you want to try something. Super useful. So we're going to look at one more photo. We've got this photo here. It's a little bit more challenging just because of the lighting here. So it's a similar photo to the first one. We've got a lighter background, a darker subject. I don't think, if I'm honest, because of all the twigs, because of all the kind of mess around, we're not going to lean into the silhouetting. I just don't think that's going to work very well because we've got too many twigs and too many things like that. We could crop in. So let's start with that first of all. Let's go for something like this. Again, center him up. Now we could try a silhouetting. We could see how that looks. We could bring the shadows down like so, the highlights up, maybe even bring the exposure up, bring those blacks down. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I just think it's a little bit too messy because of these twigs, because of these branches and the way that they're sitting in the photo. So we're going to go ahead and just reset all of that. I think what we want to do, we're going to start by bringing the highlights down a little bit. We're going to bring those shadows up. I think we're going to bring the overall exposure up a little bit as well. We're going to warm it again. I like that golden kind of feel that we had. Vibrance up a little bit. Maybe saturation just a touch. Not too much. We don't want to go too crazy with this. Maybe clarity up just a little bit. Just a little bit. Sometimes less is more. And, I'm going to play around similarly with the HSL sliders, right? So the hue, saturation, and luminance. We can always bring that yellow down a bit in luminance, maybe even in saturation as well. That's better. That's much better. Right, we've made a good difference there. Okay, so even just this, before, after, I think we're making a nice difference to the kind of color, the tones of it, but we're definitely going to come up here to masking. Let's click subject. Let's see how Lightroom does. Again, really, really good. Let's go ahead and just bump up the exposure initially. Let's bump up the shadows a bit as well. We're going to go ahead and do another mask. We're just going to paint that similarly onto the face and the eye. Let's bring that exposure up. I think that's actually looking pretty good. So let's look at the before and after. This is before. This is after. Before, after. I think that's looking actually, do you know what? I think that's looking pretty good. We could even bump the overall exposure of the photo up, I think, a little bit. Maybe even bring the whites up. Again, do you know what I'm going to do is one more radial gradient, a nice big one like this. I'm going to invert it. I'm going to bring the exposure down so it's more of a vignette. Let's actually bring the feather down a little bit as well, so that we're making sure to just absolutely make sure our subject is nice and bright. Right, the vignette's not creeping onto our subject there. Do you know what? I like that. Let's look one more time. Before, after. So we've really made it from the subject being very dark in the scene, very bright background, to very light in the scene, kind of an orangey golden feel to the colors. I really like that. I'm really happy with how these photos have turned out. I was really happy with the shoot day. It was very, very fun to go out and shoot with that lens. And I feel like I got a lot of good stuff. Not only was I lucky with the weather, with the actual creatures coming out and being very visible and very kind of helpful, to be honest with you, with taking wildlife photos, I also felt like I just came away with a lot of usable, good photos, which I was really pleased with. That's really nice. Kind of bumped up my selection of wildlife photography and gave me a nice bit of practice. Now, there's loads more photos we could look at. Let me know what you think about these slightly more relaxed Tutorial Tuesdays. No specific theme, just you and me. We're hanging out, we're editing photos, we're having a good time. Obviously, it's not going to be every week, but let me know what you think. If these are the ones you enjoy, we could do them every now and then. It's a fun one for me to do, to be honest. It's nice. It's a good time. I edit photos all the time anyway. So it's a fun one to dive into. Otherwise, you can check out the full list of all the kits. So the Sigma 500mm, the camera I use, all the stuff for this video by checking out the links down in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because there's new content all the time. New tutorials every Tuesday, of course. New reviews all the time. I will see you in the next video. But until then, as always, thanks for watching.